Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. In episode 1 of The Old Worlders, Mark and I discuss, will homebrew rules for legacy armies end up splitting the community? Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems, and offer custom items to suit your club, your event, or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description. All right, hello again, Mark. How are you doing? Looking forward to a longer conversation rather than a little tease in episode 0.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting discussion, I think.
Yeah, I hope so, and I hope we don't upset anyone with any of these discussions. If you know Mark and if you know me on the channel, you'll know that we're not really controversial kind of people, but we do want to talk about some sort of bigger issues as some of the things that we cover on the podcast. There will, of course, be podcasts where we just talk about releases and we just talk about the new shiny thing or something fluffy and fun that we did as a game or event we went to, etc. But a lot of the time, we want to have nice conversations around topics. And one of the things that I think keeps coming around at the moment is talk around balancing the game around comp, and then more importantly at the moment, how to handle legacy factions. And there's a lot of community rules around that, and that's what the discussion is around today. How the community and all its different members and leaders within the community, a lot of people are coming up with incentives, writing rules, alternative rules to GW rules, sometimes making up for holes when there are gaps, when there aren't, sometimes just trying to unify, and just talk about the prospective dangers of trying to do that. Community is great and bringing people together is great, but then if there are rules as part of that, and a community like to push back against rules sometimes, do we sometimes fracture the community more? And that's what we're going to try and ramble our way through discussing today. So I thought we'll start with a bit of background, really. The first one is, what are legacy armies? What are legacy armies to you, Mark?
They're armies that have always been a part of the Warhammer universe, but for whatever reason have not been given the full range or scope in a journal backing them up for the original release of the Old World. So they are armies that are well established for the most part. Have always been part of the Warhammer universe, but basically haven't got their own army journal, have only got a PDF.
Yeah, essentially. Very, very shortly before the launch of the game, I think it was the launch week or the preview articles that were coming up to the launch of the
Yeah.
game, they kind of dropped it on the community, didn't they? That you'll have rules to play all of these armies, but these factions, these 7 factions, won't be official. They'll be called Legacy, and the rules will only be provided by PDFs, and they won't be part of the game from a competitive point of view. And obviously, when Games Workshop mentions that, they mean their official events, which is pretty much just those of Warhammer World, and we'll
Yeah.
probably come back to that in a moment. But that's what legacy armies are. They're armies that existed in previous editions that have a set of rules at launch as a free download, as a PDF, but they've not really been developed further since that. There was one minor adjustment, I think, was a few updates, but they've not really evolved with the game as the arcane journals have come out, and they've definitely not been updated and reflected any of the FAQ or errata changes that we've seen since there.
Mm.
And I suppose that brings us that's the official status of those legacy armies at the moment, is that nothing's happening with them from an official point of view. Games Workshop are completely quiet on them. There's been no updates, and there's a little bit of consternation about that. So, I mean, do you have any thoughts about their current status and where we find them at the moment?
Um, yeah, it's kind of an awkward situation where Games Workshop quite clearly said, as you've just said just before launch, that these armies are not going to be part of the competitive scene for Games Workshop. So obviously, as you said, just events at Warhammer World, but that always has a trickle down faction, and that sort of like takes us into the realm of people like, oh, are we going to play them at our events? Are we going to let people play them? do they need balancing? Are they already balanced? Because it's obvious that not as much time has gone into them, or the majority of them, as the main factions that have been covered. So they do need looking at. Games
Mm.
Workshop have obviously said they're not going to be looked at pretty much in this edition. Does that mean they're going to be looked at in the next edition? We don't know yet, really. There's lots of hints and rumours out there, but yeah, we don't know. I think for the Warhammer universe to be complete, they need to be included in it because these are armies that have got a massive part of history within the universe, and not just that. A lot of my friends have got these armies and want to be able to play them on a fairly balanced, playing field. And at the moment, they can't. It's a bit tricky. They're just not really up to scratch, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. Completely agree. They're not in a healthy state for some players for sure. And you have a mix, like you said, a mix of responses. Games Workshop's response is now to ignore it and at their official events. And I went to one in January. They're just not there because they don't support them. You're not actually allowed to take one of those armies there, which is a little bit bizarre in some ways. Even in their kind of weaker state, they're not going to damage anything. Vampire
Mm.
counts notwithstanding, maybe.
With yeah, as the
Um,
caveat of vampire
yeah,
counts, obviously.
it's always the caveat. But and then you've got for some people who are coming new to the game, don't really know much about them, don't know they exist. So there's a bit of a knock-on effect there. Most events, most independent events will allow them. But I think you'll start to see, which I think you were hinting at there, the longer we go like this, more and more we'll think, well, why should we include them? At least there's definitely a debate around that, which is a bit of a shame. And then you've got third party fixes now, which is a lot of what this podcast today is about. And about the impact of those third party fixes, because ultimately they're a positive thing to try and make it better, to take a situation that's not optimal and try and improve upon it. But like with anything you do, there's a bit of a knock on. So let's talk a little bit about the community's response then. So we're leading into that.
Mm.
I think the legacy armies have been widely accepted. There are a few examples where maybe newer players or some people will just say they can't be balanced, so let's not use them. But I would say very strongly that they've been widely accepted and people want to be able to play them. I've not seen any evidence against that. I'm not sure if you have.
No, I haven't. And I think if you look at the majority of events that have been recorded on Old World rankings over the past 2.5 years, every event has normally got a legacy army outside of a GW official event. Normally, okay, yeah, it's probably vampire counts, but certainly at the start of the edition, there was a real strong showing from Dark Elves because they could do shenanigans with dragons and things like that. So there's a lot of play in some of them. I think they're generally still about. I think that vampire counts is obviously the real standout. Um, Outside of that, if you was to take vampire counts out of the equation now, I think it's interesting to see what other sort of like factions might still be getting played because I'm not
Hmm.
sure that it's a huge amount as much as I'd like it to be a huge amount because you know Lizardmen and Skaven definitely need to be part of the equation moving forward. Certainly, I think, or I'd hope so. But as you say, we don't know, do we? So it's going to be
No.
interesting.
Yeah, definitely. This would be a question for maybe for the viewers, and we'd like you to comment below on your thoughts for any of this. This is a friendly, open discussion. But maybe it's a question, a separate sub question for the viewers is that if Vampire Counts suddenly had an arcane journal were all official, would the noise and the call for some of the other legacy armies die down a little bit? Skaven are definitely seminal and should be part of it, but some of the other factions may be less loved. And if a couple of the big ones were brought back, you worry that then maybe the other factions would be held off. But that is a rabbit hole. I'm not sure that we've got the time to go down today, and it's
Yeah,
not the title of
maybe
this, so
maybe another episode.
maybe another episode. Absolutely. So we know the state we're at with it. People are still playing them. They want them in the game. I think the first way that we've seen to fix them in inverted commas is the more basic way is via comp. And by comp, it is a way of usually for a competitive event, but sometimes they're used in of social settings and things at clubs where some changes are made to core rules of armies to make things a little bit better. So maybe some light comp helps fix legacy armies. So I think that's the first layer of changes that you see. It's usually trimming off the worst excesses. Most comps, there are exceptions out there that change things. But I think the argument would be that they don't always solve the problems of these legacy armies because they are now so far behind the curve because of all of the arcane journals and the FAQs and erratas. But how do you feel about the comp and the way it deals with legacy armies and hopefully bringing them up a little bit towards the sort of the meta level?
It's 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 tricky, isn't it? Because obviously with Cafe there was, and then Vampire Counts at roughly the same time. There was a massive amount of comp, so things got really murky for a little while, where people were sort of like, "Oh well, there's comp there. We should comp this as well, and then we should comp that." And then poor factions like dwarfs that, all right. I appreciate I've got a Dairy After Dark t-shirt on, but the dwarves copped a massive amount of fallout for no reason. I mean, they were sitting mid-table minding their own business, and then just got slam dunked for no reason. So I feel that comp is sometimes necessary.
Mhm.
I don't think that an overabundance of comp is good for the game. Personally, I like three or four different variations, maybe. That'd be my preference. I know other people like to be able to go to a different sort of like comp event every weekend.
Yeah,
Um, but I think it has had a real big impact on legacy. I think the problem is that because the legacy armies are already so far behind, with
mm,
obviously the exception of vampire counts, that when you start putting comp onto them, they're already in a real rough space because they've got stuff. All of their best stuff is fighting for rare and special slots. And when you start putting restrictions on rare and special slots, then obviously it's going to have a knock on because they're the units that they need to be able to fill to bring them up to balance. And if
yeah.
they can't do that, then yeah, it makes it really tricky for them, I think. So I don't think comp has really helped legacy factions at all. I mean,
Yeah.
the vampire count players will tell you that it hasn't helped vampire counts, that's for certain. But I think that they probably are very grateful to have got away with as much as they got away with for so long, really, without really being touched. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is a real murky area. I'm not sure. What do you think about it? How do you think it's affected it?
I don't think it's done a lot. I think Combs tries to sort of work with the constantly evolving errata and FAQ. The problem is that um, errata and FAQ has left most of the legacy factions behind, and then at the same time, vampire counts have been able to duck under the lowering bar of the FAQ and erratas really. So they're probably not
Yeah.
suffering the changes that they should do that other armies of their type in the main game and in massive inverted commas there. So I think you're probably right. I think yeah. Overall, it's very hard to do a comp that balances across this game anyway. The game is if you think about the development of the armies in this game, of how many additions there are, there's not a balanced number of units in each army. If you were to start from scratch, you wouldn't design it the way it is now. Some army books have
No.
so many more entries and units than others, and some have been around a lot longer than
Mhm.
others and have been a lot more developed. So it's almost impossible to have a balanced game anyway, because they're not even balanced in the number of units and unit types that they have. And then when you add a comp to try and level that out a little bit, that only works if all the armies are being developed at the same stage and the same pace. And as we know,
Mm.
they're not because they're legacies. They're being missed out by the FAQs and things. So that you can do a bit, but it won't fix enough. Probably you can never fix all, but it probably won't fix enough. So the other side that the community has done, the community response, aside from that, is people writing alternative army lists for them, reworking them. And then the elephant in the room in terms of naming it will obviously be Val and his renegades. And it's been so highly followed now that it's yeah, there will already be comments on this video at this stage. People are saying renegades brilliant, solved this problem, brilliant. And I think what Val's doing there is putting an awful lot of passion and a lot of hard work into a project that's got a lot of benefits. There's loads and loads of really positive things about it. So at no point would I ever criticize it for what it does there. I do think there are some potential knock-on negatives for it, and I've had conversations with people. I think you may have as well, but I won't put words in your mouth. But people that get hit on the negative side. Everything that's positive, there's always a downside to things as well.
Yeah.
That adoption of things like that is tricky, and that's again what the crux of what the conversation today is around, and about big community projects, and then getting buy-in, and where you get that sort of, I'm not sure if full authority is the right word, but permission from the community to become a lead on something. And then do you cause a split because of that? Because there are instances where people in clubs where they don't agree fully with the rules made in changes like the Renegade Armies, and they find that their club has made a ruling, that's it, we just play Renegades, nothing else. And I think it could be a concern now, and we'll discuss that a little bit more later on. But I think there
Mm.
can be a concern, and I don't think that's Val's intention anyway. In fact, he's been very clear in the videos I've seen him talking about it,
No.
is that he's doing this for people to use if they want to. But obviously, when you chuck something out into the public sphere, some groups will treat it in different ways, and you end up with people feeling like, well, I don't want to be forced to use these unofficial rules, and that's one person's interpretation of them. Another one's is, well, why wouldn't you use them? Because they're absolutely brilliant. They make the army better. It's fix loads of really obvious problems. And both of those things can be true at the same time, which is so often the problem
Yeah,
with life. We have nuance in life that is often missed out. And for me, the question is not whether or not they should be used, because they should absolutely be used if you want to. It's maybe how far they become interwoven in the fabric of the entire community, and how the community can use them in a positive way, but not dominate and become the new official. Because I think it's a really tricky balance to keep everyone happy,
yeah,
and you
definitely.
probably can't. I don't know. I'm rambling for a little bit there. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts on
I
it?
like no one can fault Val. No one puts that amount of work into something who isn't passionate about it,
Hmm.
because why would you? There's no reason for you to, and he's obviously put a huge amount of work into it. Um, and then on the other side, I can see people, say that, well, okay, yeah, he's put a lot of work in it, and they recognise that, but they still don't like it because it's not official. Um, and it's it's very difficult because there's no real grey area here. Is there? You're either on one side of the fence or the other. I think what everybody can agree is all people want is for whatever happens to be for the best of the game,
Hmm.
so that the majority of people can have the most amount of fun. The journey on how we get there is yet to be determined, but no one puts that amount of work into something if they're not passionate about something. But levels of testing, has it been tested enough for competitive play? I don't know. I haven't really spoken to Val about it. Um,
Hmm.
so I don't know. I use it. All the narrative campaigns that I run,
Hmm.
we use it because it just makes it super easy for my friends that have got lovely painted sort of like third, fourth, and fifth edition armies to be able to play. If we didn't have that, it it using just the legacy lists would be carnage. They
Yeah.
they'd never stand up to it. It would probably not be worth them playing. They'd still want to play because they want to be part of it, and I fully appreciate that. And you have to then come up with your own set of rules in house, don't you? But it's certainly tricky, and I can see the arguments from both sides of the fence. I don't know. this is one of those things that I honestly don't have a clear-cut answer for because
Yeah.
I, I just don't know. I think in the ideal world, what everybody possibly would like would be just for Games Workshop to just bring all the legacy armies back on board,
Yeah.
and and from there everything is out and everything's official, and then it's a real shame for Val because he spent a lot of work doing it. But if he hadn't have spent that amount of work doing it and maybe forcing GW's hand, would have would they have brought the legacy factions back?
Yeah.
It's all pie in the sky. We don't have an answer, do we? So
You're
it's
never going to
it's
know,
it's
are
all
you? You may
no.
maybe in 10 years down the line if Jordan Salisbury's still doing history, but
He might have he
because
might have a chat with somebody and
interview
it'll all
someone that
come to
says, "Yeah,
light
we
and
brought
everybody
them
go,
back
oh, I remember
because of
that.
this." Yeah, I think you're right though. It's we're not here to give you answers either. This is a discussion because I think it's something I'm noticing in the comments on my videos, something I'm noticing more and more in the community, some anecdotal stuff. I'm talking to people about their experiences, including a couple of my patrons have shared experiences at their local clubs. That's where that sort of point I was making forward. And that's just, a couple of examples over a huge community. And there'll be many, many more positive examples as well. And like I said, this is nuanced. And when you talk about things online, what you end up with is polarized. And that's what the way the world is at the moment. If we don't want to drift too much into the natural state of the world, especially in its online state.
I just want to say that, like, I think everybody can just agree that everybody just wants to have fun playing Warhammer.
Yeah.
And yes, it is difficult because it is uh, a situation that we've got into from whatever path. Maybe we should have Games Workshop should have looked at it more beforehand, but they'd already set out their stall pretty much. I don't think they could have envisioned that this was going to happen somewhere
Yeah.
down the line because the game was suddenly as successful as it's become. So I think it's probably caught them on the hop a bit. We
Yeah.
know that they were squeezed a bit, certainly for the first sort of like 9 months really of the life of the game. So, time constraints have obviously played a huge part in them getting anything out. I don't know. All I would say is everybody try and treat each other with a little bit of respect. If somebody's playing a way that you don't personally want to play, that's fine. You haven't got to play that way. You play how you want to play to have fun.
Yeah.
If you come to a situation where there's something where you think, well, this might not be a lot of fun to me, just don't play. It's you,
Yeah.
you have that choice. It's there's enough events out there for everybody to be able to find something, especially in the UK. I can't talk for other countries, but in the UK, there's so much going on that people will be able to find an event that caters to their needs pretty much at least once a fortnight, if not every weekend, I think. And just have fun,
Mhm.
and be decent people to each other, I think is the real answer.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. I think GW are at fault to a point, and not the creatives making the game at all. I'm sure they would have wanted to bring back more factions right from the beginning, without doubt. I think they're probably a little bit naive not to realise that there would have been a bit more of a pushback once people got past the initial excitement, because some of those names on that legacy list are so sort of central to Warhammer Fantasy and some of the bigger selling factions in the past. So your Vampire Counts, your Skaven, that it was always going to be a problem at some point. And to go this far into the game and not have updated those legacy PDFs, even if you're keeping them as legacies, to update them was going to cause issues. But on the same side, I appreciate they just don't have the manpower for someone it's hard enough for them to do an FAQ and errata every 6 months, let alone to
Mm.
to do it. I know there'll be people in the comments saying, well, they're a multi-billion value company. Get all of that. Yes, they could afford to, but the way they break down their business and the way they put things in departments and budget those departments, there isn't the money if you look at it on that granular level. And now the success of the game may change that, and hopefully that changes. But there are loads of positives for things like Renegades. The community was passionate about seeing these armies being played on a more basic, on a more level. The rebalancing was needed really badly in some places, and even some of the lot of the changes are very very simple. They just reflect FAQ and errata changes that we've seen with other armies. So they would almost undoubtedly match over if they had updated them.
Mm.
Has a really positive effect on the community. We've seen most of the reaction to it, at least online, seems to be people excited about the next Renegade army. So they're all the good points. The negatives are, as I said, how we deal with it as a community. And I don't think that so much comes from Val because he's been very open when he said, use them if you want to. I think just make sure, like you said, that if people saying, I don't want to use the unofficial rules, I only want to use the official rules, that you respect that and don't start trying to polarize and put people in camps, because
Mm.
it shouldn't be about that. The game's a lot more sort of small community based anyway. And if you are a small community leader, you're running at a club or something, again, just if you can, it's hard to keep an eye on that. Think about if you're going to say our club only runs on this. If it's an open club that the public can come along to, and you want to encourage new people, have a think about how you handle it. If it's a private clubbing out of your garage and it's invite only, well, you do what you want, don't you? Really.
Yeah.
So it's just think about that community thing, because this is where you could end up with a split of that, the legacy official GW only, or renegade, which I don't think represents the community at all, but it's a way that it's sometimes represented online. And then the people who decide not to use renegades will be called shills and all the rest of the stuff, and it's just messy, it's horrible, there's no need for it, and it's quite a reductive conversation.
Mm.
To move on then, because I think there's something that's linked to this and grows this conversation even more, and we've seen it more recently, and then in the last 24 48 hours I saw a video on another channel, and I can't remember their name fully at the moment. I'm not going to, because it'll sound like I'm calling them out, but they were talking about building a community based on what they do in Italy,
Yeah, the
about a
Federation.
structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Federation, about a structure for the world community, and bring a uniform sort of set of rules and structures to the game to bring it all together. And I absolutely love the passion and the ethos behind that, because it's the opposite of what I was being concerned about in this video, saying that we could have a split. But my concern is will that actually happen in that way? The problem with if someone comes up would be the same with renegades. It would be the same with a comp system. Someone comes up with an idea, the next person's not going to like it, and do you end up with more splits when you're actually trying to bring people together? And then where do you get the legitimacy from? Who decided that person or those people were in charge of making a rule that the worldwide community of all world players should all adhere to? And all these things start from a place of passion, a place of the love for the game and wanting the best for the game. But I have alarm bells ringing every time I see something like this. But for all the positives from it, I can just see the arguments that are going to come from it, which I think the arguments can actually do more damage and cause more splits than the actual desire to bring the things together in the first place.
Yeah, it's I I can't fault the passion in that video, and I think that's probably what every nation is feeling, that they want to get organized and motivated and pull everybody under one roof and get everybody talking to each other. And that's brilliant. That's how you build communities. But I can't help but feel that when it comes to things on a global scale, we already have WTC,
Hmm.
um, who are kind of doing quite a lot of that anyway. I know that they're not doing necessarily the community building side of things, but they are doing the rules side of things and the organizational side of things. So maybe if we come to a situation where every nation has got that sort of thing like a federation that they're putting forward, that's fantastic. But then maybe a committee has to be formed from there,
Hmm.
um, so that everybody's got an equal voice. Because I don't think that one global leader or person saying how it's going to pan out is good for the game long term. It will almost certainly cause arguments. There will be split away factions almost immediately, I would imagine, because you and I, we both speak very good English, I would imagine. We both read the rules very well. There are a lot of cultural differences. A lot of people don't read English as their first language, so they have a slightly different interpretation of the rules. We've seen this all the time at international and even GT level, where people fly over for a weekend away and everything, and
Yeah.
the judges have to get involved sometimes and explain things. If we can't already get that working, then if you start interjecting lots of different nations into things, then I do think that you're just going to end up with a lot of paperwork that is going to overburden people and almost take people away from what they're trying to do, which is build the community, because they'll be forever fighting fires.
Yeah.
So I think worldwide a committee is a fantastic way to do things. I think WTC has got that pretty
Hmm.
much already in place. Um, Community wise, I know that there's a lot of YouTubers like yourself that have all got their own little communities. Um, and you often find that people that are in one community will also be in another community, and there's a lot of people that move around and are in several communities at the same time. So I don't know that it's practical for the sake of one person or a team of people to be able to run one thing community wise, sort of like globally.
Yeah.
I can't see how that can work unless it's Games Workshop doing it,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's really what it's their game. It's their lookout to do something like that if they so wish. It doesn't look like they've wanted to do that too much so far. So obviously there are a lot of groups being set up, but yeah, I can't fault the passion of the guy or what he's trying to do. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what he was doing with the rankings and talking about organising tournaments and things like that, because Gomo has already got a fantastic setup for
Yeah.
old world rankings, hasn't he? Where you can see and events where you can see everything that's going on pretty much globally. So maybe maybe that is the one instance where that can be used as one person showing all of the events. But I think that's a lot different from building a community. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you view it. It's a bit of a weird one, isn't it? To sort of like think, well, there's so many people that look at things in so many different ways that can we all sort of like find a common ground? I'm not sure we can.
Yeah, I don't think we need to either, and I'll come on to that a bit more when we kind of conclude at the end. But
Mm,
to answer your question more about what I feel, I don't think it was incredibly well thought out. I just thought it was a lot of nice ideas as conversation starters based on a system that he believes works well within the Italian community. Now, I don't know, I don't speak Italian, I don't hang around in the Italian forums, I don't play in the Italian community, but I'm sure that there are dissenters within that community as well. Reading the comments on that video, it was quite clear at this point they're not using the Renegades.
mm,
So if that was a conversation over here or in Australia or something, then you'd probably have people saying, well, hang on a minute, well, we all play Renegades. So you've already got a massive split there. It's already demonstrating what some of my fears were. And that's just from reading the comments on the video. I think you mentioned old world rankings. I think that that is an example of a different kind of community. It's a
mm,
community tool that people can use optionally. And it doesn't affect their ability to turn up an event and play. It doesn't affect the comp that's played at that event. And it doesn't affect the comp or the way you play it in your garage or at your club.
mm,
It's there, that it exists as a tool on the side. The Army Leader, all the stuff on there at the moment actually supports multiple different types of play. The same with Old World Builder. You can choose whether you're using Renegades or Legacy armies. You've got all those different options. So however you play your Warhammer, you can make those tools work for you. You're not excluded because you've made a choice or been forced into a choice by what your local community is doing. But either way, you have a lot of agency there with a community a tool like Old World Rankings. You don't have to be on there, and it won't change your rankings, your Warhammer experience at all if you don't want to be on there. But it just won't make any. It just people won't be able to see where you ranked and what you did, because a lot of it
Mm,
is about a tool for other people to see what other people are doing and get inspiration. You just won't be included in that. That's fine. It doesn't break your Warhammer at any stage. Whereas if you have something that becomes centralized that tries to enforce a set of rules or guidelines on every other event. And there seems to
no,
be the potential of a lot of players in a lot of different situations here, all having great ideas and passions, looking to become leaders within the community. But a lot of that is a very top down kind of view on things. And the most important thing is that as a community, I believe we should be drawn together by the game as it is, and then
yeah,
the other things are feed off from it rather than the core minutiae of the rules. And again, I'll come back to that sort of in terms of conclusions, I suppose. But I think there's a danger that we think we start from like a rules-based order at the top, and this is why we want to unify. But actually, as much as we don't like what GW does all the times or agree with all their rulings, and definitely don't agree with their non-support of certain armies, they still have to be the top when it comes to the rules. They have to be the central point for the world community, and then any changes for that should be situational for events and all the ways you want
mm,
to play your Warhammer on your own. Any additions you make, any changes are additions to that as a core, rather than something almost competing with that at the top. Because who writes the game? And then every time they bring out something new, that worldwide committee or that national committee, they're always expected to make a ruling on, and everyone's waiting to find out, can we play this the way it is, or do we have to see the change? I'm not sure that's going to be a very healthy place to be.
no. My feeling is that it will perhaps generate a lot more friction, and we've already got quite a lot of that in the community at the moment. So I'm not sure that adding more to the pot is necessarily good for the game. But again, yeah, same as with Val, can't fault the chap's passion. Anybody who is, that passionate about a game deserves to be able to stand up and have their
Mm.
say about it. Whether or not you want to take up on it or not is, as always, is an individual's choice. So I think that's the thing. If it's not how you want to play, don't take part in it. There's plenty of stuff going on in the Warhammer world, as I said before, that you can play the game how you want to play every weekend, wherever you want to play it with your mates at an event. It's I don't think it's I think it's got blown up out of proportion because potentially because we haven't had the level of announcements when we was having the level of announcements that we had last year from GW. Um, we didn't have this. There was a little bit of chat about comp because obviously there was issues with Cathay, but there there was none of this sort of like infighting as it was within the community. And obviously people are very passionate about it because they're passionate about a hobby because they're very, you know, um, what's the word I'm looking for? They're very invested in what they do. So I can understand that the passion and everything. I just think that maybe something should have happened before now from GW to maybe even just an announcement or something saying, "Hey, look, in second edition, we're going to be looking at something or not." But whether or not their hands are tied on that, I don't know. So it's
Yeah.
yeah, tricky, isn't it? It's really murky at the moment. I was you know, as long as my friends get to play their armies at a reasonable level of balance, then you know, in my campaigns, then I'm pretty happy. I'm not sure if I'm as happy on a more competitive stage with things that may not have been balanced as much as other things. I don't know. It's as I say, it's really murky.
Yeah, it can be at times, and I echo your point that I think if Games Workshop are in a position with changes now that they could put some if they do intend to make these armies mainstream, which I would hope they would now, at least some of them, if not all of them, but they know it's going to be a little time off. I would love to see them be aware of what's happening with the community, and if they're able to respond to it, if that means assigning someone some time to go through those legacy armies as they are and bring them in line, even if it's just with the FAQ and erratas that they've already put out, that would be great to see. I think it would show a lot of goodwill towards the community, if someone has the time to do that, especially if they are now realizing, you know what, we are going to have to keep these and bring these back. The initial intention may have been, we don't know. We don't know if they ever will be brought out. I'm sure now that conversation would have changed a bit. So hopefully they can see that the community are talking about it. They can see what the community is doing itself and reflect upon that, and maybe not just leave it to the community, which they often do, and come out and update those. I don't think they should be coming out with other types of comp. They've done an FAQ, they've done an errata, they've got a match play guide. That's what they are. That's their view on it. We can then adjust that further as needed. But the legacy faction bit, I think they could readdress again now, and I hope that they do that. Have you got your conclusions, your overall sort of thoughts and wishes on this?
I think just to echo what I've said before, that it's a great hobby. You should play to have fun. Sometimes there's going to be events or things that you're not going to have as much fun at because you might not like the way that the comp has been run for the event, or you might not like being not able to play your armies. But there's enough choices out there. I think you just got to find a happy place for yourself. Personally, as long as my friends that play in the campaigns that I run get to use their armies and it's kind of balanced as much as it can be, um, given the current circumstances, then I'm pretty happy from that. I think that if GW aren't going to do anything about it, then I'd like to see maybe another organisation perhaps take on a role, sort of like, even if it's temporarily, about making some more official sort of like balanced rules on the legacy factions. But I'm not sure if that's even viable because of the vast amount of time that would take. But we've got a lot of passionate people in the country and in the world who play Warhammer. I can't, I can't imagine from my own, there's not enough people out there that are willing to throw some time at play testing stuff so that something like that could happen. I'm sure that there would be.
Mm.
But yeah, just play to have fun. And if you're not having fun, then find another part of the system within Warhammer where you can have fun with it. You know, don't beat yourself up and put yourself in a position where you're doing something that you don't want to. There's enough variation out there at the moment that you can find something, to spend your time doing that you will enjoy.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's very fair, and I would definitely echo that from the community is wide reaching, and if you do find yourself in a situation locally, where you have a bit of friction in your club, then I'm really sorry to hear that. I don't think that's something that's widely reported, but there will be individual situations like that. I, I was interested where you talked about a little bit about an organisation. One of the ones springs to mind, and it's easy for me to talk about because I'm not involved in sort of in competitive world Team Warhammer, but I don't want anyone to do that kind of federational, these are the rules, everyone should follow it. But it doesn't mean there can't be an organizational influence on what we do. And a lot of that harkens back to me to what they used to be for old edition, especially sixth, seventh, eighth edition. So I think a group of players that maybe WTC, that kind of thing, when they make rulings, there's an FAQ for that event anyway, for an event like that, highly competitive, make a set of guidelines and rules that they use for their events. I think that there should be something there that people look at and can maybe use, but there should never be any feeling that they're in charge of, again, everything we've just been talking about, the danger of that
Mm,
federation style thing is that someone's in control. So I think if it's a committee of players, experienced players who play a lot of competitive Warhammer, that come up with a strong FAQ document that's updated each year for use for worldwide international competitive events, and then other events and countries and clubs and individuals in their garages can choose whether they want to use those. But I think there's a danger when it feels like it's impressed upon people. So to basically using best practice, isn't it? Rather than optionally
yeah.
using best practice, rather than feeling like that it's someone said this is the way we're going to play. We're going to sign up to this, the UK committee rules or whatever it is. I think
Mm,
as soon as it becomes like that, it's an issue. But when it's a best practice thing, it's great. I remember back in seventh and eighth edition, there were good comp systems back then. There were the South Coast GT, ETC comp. There were a few others, Swedish,
TC.
and different events would use different comps, and some would copy. They're going, running an event this month is using X comp, and there is an element of that now. We've got quite a few comp systems. As part of that, sometimes there's an FAQ. There is the added complication that there wasn't legacy factions back there, and that does add an extra layer. But in terms of the approach and the ethos back then, was that there was no one comp to rule them all. There was no one set of committee to rule them all. There were just different organizations. Some would naturally become leaders because of the quality of what they did, but people could choose it. And I never felt going to my local clubs during seventh edition and eighth edition that I was using an alternative set of rules to Games Workshops. It never felt like that. It felt like there was the main rules, and then I would organize with that player. And they would say, I'm going to this event. Do you mind if we practice that comp? Do you mind if we use that comp? That felt normal. That felt natural. And I never felt any pressure. And that's probably what we should feel now. So
Mm,
I'm a big believer that diluting all of this. How I know you said you don't want to have too many different comps, and I get the danger of that. But I also think if you've got this sort of weird multiverse of different comps that are relatively light, that nothing's embedded as the main one, because the game is the main one, then you end up with a less fractured community, because that community centers around the core of the game and then diverges off into those smaller, subtle changes as and when they are needed.
mm.
So I'm playing Skaven today. Do you mind if I use the Renegades list because the other one is no good? Yeah, absolutely. But they shouldn't just be. I think it's dangerous when you start making default rules anywhere and saying this club only uses X or only uses Y. I think that's when you start sort of splitting communities. It's all a bit fluffy, maybe, all a bit pie in the sky, all a bit, it doesn't match the real world always. But I would always be cautious of any sort of, yeah, I mean, this is it. This is the way it should be. And I think as a community, we need to be a bit mindful of that because I think all of the things that people are doing are positive. All the different comps are great. What Val's doing is great if you want to use it, and I'm sure he would agree with that as well. That he definitely doesn't think people should just go and use it, and there should never be any pressure for events and TOs and players to use stuff that they don't want to. All right then. So, Mark, have you got
That's
any
fair.
other thoughts before we close this one down?
I've probably got enough thoughts to fill up another 100 episodes, so I guess we get started there from there, yeah.
Anyone you want to shout out before I let everyone go?
No, well, yeah, yeah, just the normal suspects, really, sort of like Barefoot Miniatures and Richie on Dowie After Dark, Tom at UK Resin Print,
Yeah.
um, yourself, obviously, but people watching this channel probably already know you're here, I would imagine.
Well,
So,
they're on the channel now.
yeah, we hope. We hope they are. But yeah, other than that, no, I think that's pretty good. And yeah, just have fun, people, with Warhammer. It's a game. It can be very very serious at times, and we all get that. And we all like winning, but there's a lot more to it than that. Make sure your opponent's having a good time as well, not just you. So yeah, spread a bit of the love both ways, I think, really.
100%, 100%. It's the game of Warhammer is far more than just competitive, just narrative, just casual. It's a whole wide community of people that just like to paint, people just like the lore, people like all of the above. And that's the most important thing to remember with any of the discussions online, that Warhammer's been around for a very, very long time. And it's because of the strength of all those different elements that I think that give it that strength, that make it ever enduring, and we've got a really bright future for the game. So thank you to all of you that have made it this far and still watching the video. We aim to do more conversations like this, sometimes talking about big community discussions at the time. We'll be talking about new releases when they come out. We'll be talking about armies and things. We'll be loads of different topics under the sun. We're all going to try to keep them as well under an hour each time to make them a little bit easier to consume. So we'll try and keep to that. I'll never make a full promise, but you never know. If you are new to the channel, do go and check out the other stuff. There's loads and loads of old world content on there. If you're not new to the channel, thank you for watching more of my crazy ideas and content on the channel. If you'd like to support me and the channel, check out all the links in the video description. There's a link to my Patreon, which is a really great way of supporting me. Check out the channel sponsor as well, Counter Attack Bases. They make really cool old world gaming aids and counters and stuff, and they do custom dice if you need them for your clubs, etc. But until next time, thank you very much for watching. Take care, and we'll catch you soon.